All right, today we are diving deep into the mind of one of the most provocative and honestly explosive thinkers in all of history, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And right away, we have to tackle the central puzzle of Rousseau. I mean, this guy was a superstar of the Enlightenment, right? The Age of Reason, all about celebrating progress and science. So how on earth did he come to the conclusion that all of that, civilization itself, was a total catastrophe? It just doesn't seem to add up. And make no mistake, Rousseau wasn't just some forgotten academic. He was a philosopher, born in Geneva, whose ideas on nature, inequality, and freedom sent absolute shockwaves across Europe. He basically challenged the entire era, and, in doing so, helped light the fuse for a revolution. So to really get him, you have to see him for what he was, the ultimate rebel from within. He was part of the Enlightenment, but he was also its fiercest critic. So let's just quickly place him in time. He was born in 1712. Then in 1749, something huge happens that changes his life forever. We'll get to that. By 1762, he's publishing his masterpieces, The Social Contract and Emile, and he dies in 1778, just over a decade before the French Revolution kicks off, a revolution his ideas would be all over. Okay, so what was that life-changing moment? It wasn't some long, drawn-out process. It was a single, blinding flash of insight that completely redirected his life and all the work that came after. Get this, it's 1749. Rousseau is walking for miles to visit his good friend, Denis Diderot, who's in prison. Along the way, he picks up a newspaper and sees an ad for an essay contest. The question seems simple enough. Has the progress of the arts and sciences corrupted or purified morals? For Rousseau, that question changed everything. Now, pretty much everyone at the time would have said, of course they've purified us. Progress is great. But Rousseau went the complete opposite direction. He argued, no, the arts and sciences are actually corrupting us. And not only did that wild, defiant answer win first prize, it made him famous almost overnight. And he wasn't exaggerating the impact this had on him. He later said it was like being struck by lightning. In his own words, "The moment I read this, I saw another universe and became a different man." Boom. In that one instant, his entire philosophy was born. This radical idea that humanity had taken a very, very wrong turn. So what exactly was this wrong turn? This question brings us right to the heart of his thinking. His ideas about our natural state, the invention of property, and how that combination leads to total corruption. Rousseau asks us to imagine a state of nature before society. Back then, he says we were guided by something he called amour de soi, basically a healthy self-love, just focusing on our own survival and well-being. But then civil society comes along and replaces it with amour propre, a toxic, corrosive vanity. Suddenly, we're forced to constantly compare ourselves to others. Our happiness depends not on what we need, but on what other people think of us. So where did it all go wrong? For Rousseau, the original sin wasn't something baked into our DNA. It was a specific invention: private property. He wrote this incredibly famous line: "The first man who, having fenced in a piece of land, said, 'This is mine,' and found people naive enough to believe him, that man was the true founder of civil society. That one act," he said, "was the source of all our division, jealousy, and the endless, miserable struggle for more." But here's the thing. Rousseau wasn't just here to complain. He saw the problem, and he proposed a radical solution. He wanted to tear up the old rules and write a brand new social contract for everybody. Now, the absolute cornerstone of his new society is this idea of the general will. It sounds a little vague, right? But it's not just mob rule or what the majority wants. It's the collective interest that benefits everyone. Think of it like traffic laws. We all agree to stop at red lights. Are we losing our freedom? No, we're actually gaining the real freedom to drive around safely without chaos. For Rousseau, that's the general will. We all agree on the laws that serve the common good, and in doing so, we become truly free. And he didn't just stop at politics. He took this same radical approach to education. In his book, Emile, he basically invented child-centered learning. He said, forget rigid rules and lectures, let kids learn from nature, from real-world consequences, let them develop their reason and their moral compass naturally, stage by stage. As you can imagine, these ideas were absolute dynamite. And after Rousseau's death, his work just exploded, shaping modern history in ways that were both incredibly inspiring and, frankly, terrifying. And here's the ultimate irony. After spending a huge chunk of his life as a fugitive, hunted for his radical ideas, he becomes a national hero. His hometown of Geneva names an island after him, and eventually his body is moved to the Panthéon in Paris, the highest honor, a resting place for the greatest minds of France. But his legacy is just completely split down the middle. You have people who adored him, the French revolutionaries, the Romantic poets, thinkers like Tolstoy. They saw him as a hero of freedom. And then you have his critics, like his arch-rival Voltaire, who thought his ideas were a dangerous attack on civilization itself. And this is where his philosophy gets really complicated, because it could be twisted. During the most extreme phase of the French Revolution, leaders like Robespierre latched onto Rousseau's general will. They used it to justify their radical actions, claiming they were just carrying out the true will of the people, even if that meant silencing anyone who disagreed. Which brings us right back to today. I mean, think about it. An age of social media, where we are literally living in the opinions of others. An age of extreme inequality and constant questions about whether progress is actually making us happier. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Was Rousseau just some misguided radical, or was he a prophet who saw the dark side of our modern world more than 200 years ago?